It is exactly 2 p.m. A very good afternoon and welcome to Market View. This is the Tuesday edition. Thank you for choosing us. You can watch us on our YouTube page, Eswatini TV, on DSTV as well. We are on channel 286. My name is Lungelele Makakola. Thank you for tuning in. Today, the Ministry of ICT and the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade is engaging stakeholders to come up with an e-commerce strategy. This is with the help of the International Trade Center and the European Union. An e-commerce strategy provides businesses with several benefits, including increased market reach, 24/7 accessibility for customers, lower operation cost, and personalized shopping experiences, amongst many other things. Business journalist Nelsiwe Ndlamandla sits down with Paul Baker, who's the Chief Executive Officer at International Economics Consulting, engaged by International Trade Center, to get the status of e-commerce in the country and what can be done to increase participation. And then later we'll connect with Asani Lesbia, who's the in-house economist for today's financial markets. For now, let's go straight to our first story. Okay. And our top story, Business Eswatini has highlighted the organization's key expectations from this year's budget. The president, Mvuselelo Fagutse, says they are aware that there might be a decline in the total budget this year, but are hoping that the minister will focus on key areas as he tackles the budget.
In general unemployment, but youth unemployment mostly, is a very big concern for Eswatini. And I think if we're going to grow this economy, we do need to, both in private sector and in public sector, work together to grow the employment base so that young people in particular, can find jobs. So I know the role of government is to create an enabling environment for the private sector. And we're hopeful that projects that are currently ongoing in the energy sector, which we appreciate the government for giving licenses to companies to start generating electricity, that those are going to go a long way in creating new jobs in the economy for our youth. But in addition to that, a lot of employment is created by large-scale projects by the government. We know that Mpakeni Dam is currently under construction. We know that's already been allocated for, and it also increases the pace. There's still a lot of work that's going to happen there, so we expect to understand how that allocation is going to happen in the current year. And obviously completing capital projects that have been ongoing for a long time. The ICC has been ongoing, and the hotel. All those projects have been ongoing for a long time, so that government can start new projects. We hear there's a new parliament that's going to be constructed. Would like to understand how budgets are going to go into that, because all those projects can contribute to new employment opportunities for young people, even though construction is always, not permanent jobs, but to the extent that the construction is ongoing, people do get employment. So we are very hopeful that opportunities to grow the private sector will reflect in the budget speech that will come on Friday.
In a move that will shape the trading landscape of the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade and ICT, they are engaging stakeholders to the development of the e-commerce strategy.
This year we're expecting tangible impact from the speech. Last year, we did listen to the budget and also got a chance to actually go through the budget. And there were a lot of promises also that were made last year pertaining different agendas that will decrease the youth unemployment, ease the way we do business also as MSME. So we're hoping, and we didn't see any impact from it as young people. So hopefully this year will be much more tangible. And we know that the Ministry of Commerce just launched its SME policy, which is clearly set a roadmap for how we actually can improve the state of our MSME in the country. The only issue that will be there is the investment into the policy implementation. So no, we're expecting direct investment into that MSME policy that was recently launched. And of course, we also expect radical, when it comes to the transparency and when it comes to how actually the money trail moves from the ministry down into actually implementing the actual policy. So I think we need to see the responsible officers, we need to see actually how the money is used from each of the ministries that are actually receiving the budget. And of course, we want to see an improvement in the, when it comes to targeted investment in youth entrepreneurship. There's we're still complaining about lack of financing when it comes to young youth businesses.
And that's it for our business news. We'll be back after the break. Stay with us.
This year we're expecting tangible impact from the
lalela sikutshele tindzaba tibuye enkosini uyezwana ninebe kunene kulandzela simemetelo semaganu samhla ka7 emakhosi sabusise emalanga lamasha kuyo indlovane uSokandaba lutsango lonke lakawowo aliphele sigodlweni ebuhleni umhla tingamashumi 21 kuyothi mhla tingamashumi 22 engomeni yakhe umhla tingamashumi 23 ayachithwa amabutho bophezu kwemkhondo usho njalo Mswati lomnyama kubakala uthuli ulo dumandaba sembelebeleni ulo dumandaba semampontweni bayethe wena phakathi
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is Market View. We continue with our program. The Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology with the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade is engaging stakeholders in the development of an e-commerce strategy with the support of the International Trade Center and the European Union. Business journalist Nilsiwe Ndlangamandla sits down with Paul Baker, who is the Chief Executive at International Economics Consulting, engaged by the International Trade Center to get the status of e-commerce in the country and what can be done to increase participation.
Paul, welcome to Market View. Before we get to the strategy, I want us to talk about the current status of e-commerce in the country. What are the numbers depicting?
Yeah, so e-commerce has been hit for quite some time. There has been quite a lot of uptake from businesses in e-commerce, but it's still quite scattered. Not all businesses are taking advantage of it. They're not always using formal mechanisms as well to sell. They don't have a payments gateway to be able to receive payments. So the idea of trying to formalize, make it a little bit more sophisticated, safer, more trustworthy, is what's underpinning our work at the moment in Eswatini.
What seems to be the hindrance? Why are most businesses not using e-commerce? Is it an issue of maybe they still need sensitization? What is the challenge?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a problem of awareness. There's also the lack of digital skills to be able to use these kinds of tools, which are quite new. There's also the lack of confidence and trust in the system. Because at the moment people are more used to meeting in person, seeing the goods before they buy them, So on the consumer side, there's some education that's needed. We need to ensure that the regulations are there to protect consumers. For example, how do we deal with the return policy at the moment? If you buy something online and it's not what you're expecting, how do you return it? All these kind of issues need to be smoothed out in e-commerce. So I think that's what's also slowing down the uptake of e-commerce. And of course, you have to have access to platforms. You also have to have the actual devices to make the purchases. So there's quite a lot that still needs to happen to be able to be fully immersed in e-commerce.
How are we doing as a country, Paul, in terms of technological infrastructure and in terms of regulatory framework? Where are we?
Yeah, so also on the infrastructure side, particularly mobile telephony, there's quite a lot of competition. Prices have been falling, maybe not quite enough. It's still quite expensive in comparison to other countries, which makes it difficult, again, to uptake. The regulatory framework has moved quite quickly, and in particular, model laws are being applied in the case of Eswatini. So that's good because it's very much looking at international standards to try and adopt laws. What might be on the weaker side is the implementation of those laws. So, for example, we have a cybersecurity agency or a data protection agency in place, but does it have the capacity to carry out its mandate? And so that's what needs to also happen. Not just having the law in place, but enforcing it as well.
I know you've highlighted a bit of the challenges and some of the things that this strategy seeks to address, but I want you to give us more information about the strategy. What are you hoping to achieve together with government and the stakeholders?
So, first of all, it's important because we need to have a vision of where we want to get to in the medium term. So it's going to be around 5 years. And we need to try and coalesce everybody behind this vision and behind these efforts that are needed. At the moment, there's a lot of activities going on, but they're not always coherent or aligned. And so we need to align everybody behind it. And then we need to better prioritize what needs to happen first. There's a sequencing element to it as well. And so we really need to ensure that that we get the building blocks established very quickly. But unfortunately, e-commerce is such a vast area. It includes traditional commerce, it includes a business enabling environment, it includes financing, it includes payments, it includes the logistics and cross-border trade. So it's a very wide area that needs to be covered in policy making.
I don't want to take the shine away from the work that is being done here, Paul, by you and government and the different stakeholders, but we've seen a lot of documents that are not implemented, like you've said before. Are we going to see full implementation of this document?
Yeah, so you're quite right. Every country faces this challenge. It's not unique to Eswatini. We have strategies and policies in place, but do we implement them? In this case, I'm a little more hopeful. First of all, I think the priority of digitalization and the opportunities of e-commerce are quite clear to all the stakeholders. Eswatini already has in place an e-commerce committee that was established under the National Trade Facilitation Committee. So they've, again, prioritized this with a multi-stakeholder approach. And then we are already seeing movement in e-commerce. So on the regulation side, we are seeing things develop. The agencies have been established, but it takes time to get them going and resource them properly. And then finally, on the development partner front, there is a lot of development partners supporting e-commerce and digital skills, from the EU to the German ministry, to the UNDP, to the World Bank, to ITC as well. And so we have all these different agencies that we know want to work and support Eswatini. And now it's a matter of bringing them all together to try and make that happen.
What is it that you are going to do as the International Trade Center to ensure that this document helps small and medium enterprises, even those businesses that are not yet using e-commerce, to embrace these digital platforms?
Yeah, so I mean, the opportunities, first of all, on the domestic market, it makes it easier for consumers to purchase your products, to see your products or your services. And when it comes to delivery on the services side, it becomes a lot cheaper to deliver services digitally as well. To tap into other markets, it reduces the costs, the transaction costs, the searching costs. So if you're able, with a lot of hard work, but you're able to go onto a platform like Jumia or Amazon, that opens up a whole new market to you that would not be otherwise available to you. It would be impossible for you to tap on the doors of different markets to get access to consumers. So this is the real advantage of e-commerce. It enables you to trade much more easily. Not saying it's easy, but it's much more easy than it was in a previous.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Paul. Let's hope that we will see you and the different stakeholders being a part of ensuring that this strategy is being implemented so that small and medium enterprises can benefit. It shouldn't be something that we can only see on paper, but let's see the results. Thank you so much for being with us on the show.
All right, so that was the Chief Executive at International Economics Consulting with business journalist Nelsiwe Nhlangamandla. Let's go for an ad break. When we return, we connect with Sanles Via.
Lalela sikutshele tindzaba letibuye enkosini uyezwana ninebe kunene kulandzela simemetelo semaganu samhla ka-7 emakhosi sabusise emalanga lamasha kuyo indlovane uthokandaba lutsango lonke lakawowo aliphele esigodlweni ebuhleni mhla tingamashumi 21 kuyothi mhla tingamashumi 22 engomeni yakhe mhla tingamashumi 23 ayachithwa amabutho bophezu kwemkhondo usho njalo umswati lomnyama kubakala uthuli ulodumandaba basempelempeleni ulodumandaba basemampontweni bayethe wena phakathi bayethe wena phakathi.
Welcome back. You're still watching Market View this afternoon. Thank you for staying with us. We now connect with Mr. Spia for today's financial markets. Good afternoon, Sanile. Thank you for tuning in to Market View this afternoon. Let's take a look at international markets, starting with the U.S. The head of the IMF, International Monetary Fund, says it's still too early to see the impact of U.S. tariffs on the world economy. What are the reactions on the U.S. tariffs in the U.S.?
Thank you, Lumelele, and good afternoon to the viewer. So yes, what we're seeing is President Trump coming in with the 25% tariff on all aluminium and all steel produce going into the U.S. So that one would expect that would actually move markets and see how markets are going to react to that. But as you know, this is not President Trump's first it's not his first presidency, and it's not the first time he started around with tariffs. So that's why markets are a bit sluggish and just watching what that is going to do. Such that even when you look at what has actually happened in last night's trade, yesterday's trade, you'll see that, that Dow Jones Industrial Average stayed at that 44,000 mark. The Nasdaq Composite Index stayed at that 19,000 mark, and the S&P 500 stayed on that 6,000 mark. One would have expected to see, all those companies that are working with steel and aluminum to somehow pull ahead in after that announcement. But as we've already said, this is not President Trump's first rodeo. And we know his modus operandi, and ideally, there is a lot of room left for bilateral negotiations and multilateral negotiations. So markets are just waiting to see this process right through to the end before we can see major reactions in terms of market movements within the U.S. markets and actually the global economy, given those tariff threats, because we know it's still going to be negotiated. But we do know that there is yet another broader set of tariffs coming in from President Trump next week on European commodities. Again, that's going to be a negotiated settlement, even with these steel and aluminium type of tariffs. We do know that there's going to be yet another negotiated settlement, and we've heard that President Trump might also want to make sure that Australia is not part of that. But if anything is to go by, what we've learned so far in this new presidency is the fact that this could be negotiated. And we've seen that with the Canada story, the Mexico story, the tariffs were there, but after reaching a certain negotiating angle, then those tariffs somehow stopped. That's why we're not seeing those numbers pulling up, pulling the markets up in terms of the steel manufacturers and those that are using steel in their basic, production processes. And further, another thing that we've learned from President Trump's previous presidency is, tariffs take quite a long time to achieve the desired result. And, most of the time you would find that it's more a short-term measure where we see jobs coming into the U.S. and pulling the U.S. market forward. But in the long term, that tends to dissipate as, global supply chains are actually reorganized. And, it depends on how much of that trade you can actually divert to come into the U.S. That is why the story of those product tariffs is quite important to lose. So that's what we're looking forward to next week, to see how that is going to shape markets. If it's going to go for product commodities, that might actually have the desired effect when he's trying to bring back quite a broad range of that production towards the U.S. So we're looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to the job data that's coming up on Friday to just give us a sense of where the U.S. economy is going. That's why we closed on that red, on that green yesterday in the U.S. market. And then if we shift across the pond and then we move into the Eurozone and into the United Kingdom, what we're seeing there is, there is a bit of mixed reaction. We're seeing London, losing just a bit. So one would say it's relatively muted, purely because London is also just a tad bit worried because, as you recall, Britain and the UK left the EU a long time ago. So what this then now puts London in the tricky position where London has to negotiate a loan, and one would then ask how big is that London negotiating power. And we know that London is one of those major exporters of those steel commodities and those aluminium commodities into the US market. So we saw the slight increase. But when you go into the greater Eurozone, so what we are seeing there is the fact that, there is the artificial intelligence summit going on within Europe, actually in France, and it ends today. So what we're seeing there is that bit of hope in terms of, realigning those markets and, they're taking over the artificial intelligence landscape. So what this means is Europe is getting poised in a better environment and a better footing compared to the UK, which has actually tabled that the £100 billion program on artificial intelligence, but it's going to be more phased and more staggered. But what we're seeing coming out of France is the fact that Saudi Arabia has already committed to pumping in money required to build that infrastructure and those servers. So what we're seeing happening is Europe is moving relatively faster. So that's why Europe is not in any way reacted to the news of the tariffs in the US. In the US, purely because there is that artificial intelligence move happening there. And what we've seen is more of a global kind of effort coming through from Europe, where we have quite a number of countries coming in to play within that tech space and that artificial intelligence space. So we are going to see quite a vigorous or a vigorous run towards being an artificial intelligence superpower between the US, China, and also the Europe is now coming into the play. So it's one of those battles that we're going to see. And if you look into the numbers, you will see that as we've been predicting, the CAC40 has actually reached that 8,000 mark. These are levels we saw before the net election, which President Macron had called earlier on. But right now we're seeing that it's back on that level. In Germany, we're seeing Germany staying at that 21,935 mark, and London staying at that 8,766 mark. But it seems markets are just not paying much attention to President Trump's tariff story. And then when you come into Japan again, what you're seeing happening there is at present, Japan is not reacted to the news because Japan becomes one of the most favored nations by the US. And I'm using that word basically very loosely, not in the sense of a most favored nation in terms of the WTO and the trading rules. So it basically means Japan is one of those that feel they may not be that much affected by those tariffs, and they have better negotiating power with the US because they are allies in terms of making sure that South China stays stable, and basically Asia Minor region as a whole stays relatively stable. So we're seeing the Nikkei staying at that 38,000 mark, 38,801 mark. And then we are seeing the Hang Seng, losing a bit of ground in the background of those tariffs. Remember that Hong Kong is actually a region of China. So when tariffs are targeted in China, they also do hit on the Hong Kong markets. And then we have the Shanghai Composite Index well within Beijing. Losing a bit of ground purely because of those tariffs. And we do know that China right now should actually be looking at how they're going to respond to those. And then what we're seeing happening again in South Africa is, we're still at that 87,000 mark, but that tariff story, and given what we're seeing happening on social media, so South Africa has, and by all rights, it must be a bit jittery in terms of how this tariff story is going to play out, because President Trump has already frozen aid into South Africa. And this 25% story, Lungelele, is not just targeted at certain countries. It's just on all aluminum and steel imports. And South Africa is one of those major producers of your aluminum and steel. And they do export quite a sizable chunk of that into the U.S. economy. So it depends right now with those fragile bilateral relations between President Trump and President Ramaphosa on how South Africa is going to find a better way of negotiating and, keeping those metals going into the U.S. market. And then coming into the Eswatini Stock Exchange, we've basically stayed on the same level. And then moving into commodities, so what we're seeing there is gold has lost a bit of that ground, but that's yet another all-time high. We are now at the 2,900 mark. And if this uncertainty continues, we should expect that 3,000 mark to actually be in reach, that $3,000 per ounce, $3,000 per ounce mark to actually be in reach. And then when we come to the price of Brent crude, what we are seeing there is, there's a bit of an upward surge in terms of the price of Brent crude at $76.89, and we should expect that upward surge probably right through to Saturday. We're probably going to sit around 78 by Friday, $78 per barrel by Friday, purely because we've had President Trump coming out and stating that if Hamas does not release all those prisoners by, say, Saturday, then all better off. So we're just waiting to see and then how that is going to throw the entire region into discourse. And, because of that tariff story and the poor geopolitical relations between South Africa and the US. We've seen, the Lilangeni losing a bit of ground across the board against the USD, against the euro, and against the Japanese yen. Thank you, Lumile.
Yeah, for today's financial market analysis, always appreciated. We've come to the end of our program today. Thank you for tuning in. You were watching the Tuesday edition of Market View. Join us again for Nedbank Business Watch tomorrow at exactly 2 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Best league in the world.
Now he's in a strange position. Haaland spots that.